The Charter Cities Institute is a nonprofit that is dedicated to building the ecosystem of charter cities. Charter cities are new cities with better laws. Why does this matter? Because governance is essential. Governance is important. Governance determines the outcomes of countries and whether their people live in success or live in worse conditions. So what we're doing at this summit and what we do at the Charter Cities Institute is we bring together entrepreneurs, new city developers, government officials, investors, service providers, because we think that this mutual learning process, we think that by having these stakeholders at the table, learning from each other, learning from best practices, allows for success, for a more rapid iterative process, and to get accelerate charter cities to the most extent possible. So I already gave a thank you to some of our sponsors, but just thought I would include this broader image thanking our sponsors. So as mentioned, the Charter Cities Institute is building the ecosystem for charter cities. We partner with governments and developers, figuring out how to make these cities a reality, how to accelerate process on the ground. So why charter cities? Well, governance matters for economic development. So as Mwanda mentioned, we see rapid urbanization in the global south that creates an opportunity to rethink governance. High-income countries, for example, like the United States, hit 50% urbanization around 100 years ago, when our per capita income was around $7,500. East Asian countries, including South Korea, hit 50% per capita, 50% urbanization rates around 40 years ago, and their incomes were around $4,500. Now Africa, for example, is hitting 50% urbanization at incomes around $1,500 to $2,000 per capita. This requires us to rethink governance. This requires us to rethink how to provide public services, how to ensure that these municipal services, that rule of law can be provided to this new rapidly urbanizing population. And this can create the potential for dramatic differences in outcomes. So how do we bring this about? What do? We convene. We host events like this to bring the stakeholders together so they can learn from each other, learn what's going well, what could be improved, how to rethink governance, and how to better plan new urban settlements. We partner. We work with organizations like AFIDA, which is a industry group of private investment partners in Africa running Catapult, an accelerator, which you'll see the presentations for shortly. And there'll be 40-minute pitch sessions throughout today and tomorrow of a variety of new city projects and special economic zones that are looking to figure out how to attract capital, how to be successful, and how to transform their respective environments. We research. We have the African Urban Lab is a project of the Charter Cities Institute based in Zanzibar. It's a partnership with the African School of Economics, and they have hosted a professional development program that just finished their first cohort with over 30 students, and now they're working on curriculum advancement with a number of African universities to improve their curriculums for urban planning so the next generation of urban planners can be armed with the best tools to succeed. So what is our theory of change, right? I guess, why does this matter? I'm an economist by trade. I have a PhD from George Mason University, and this might be a little bit wonky for some folks in the audience, but oftentimes economic liberalization is stalled because of interest groups. The classic example is sugar producers in Florida. The US, for example, has a very high sugar tariff. It costs American consumers tens of billions of dollars every year. Why does the US have that sugar tariff? because there's a handful of number of sugar producers in Florida that benefit from that tariff because they can sell their products without having to compete with sugar producers around the world, right? So you have a concentrated benefit that leads to a bad public policy that has substantial negative effects for consumers, right? And this explains a lot of poor policy around the world. So the question is, what is the right lever? How do we change policy in a way that's scalable, that's sustainable, that can lead to substantial improvements in living conditions, improvements in economic growth? And the way we do that is by liberalizing, focusing on a few regions, right? Rather than focusing on the whole country. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. Like, it's good to try to push for national level reforms. It's good to try to improve governance on the national level. However, we should also try to push for improvements in governance on the local level, right? We believe by pushing for improvements in governance on the local level, we can lead to deeper governance reforms than otherwise possible, and have these deeper reforms cascade and lead to improvements in economic growth. So what are some historic examples, right? The classic example is the Chinese special economic zones. In 1980, Shenzhen was declared a special economic zone along with 3 other special economic zones in China. Why did China do this? So Deng Xiaoping had recently taken power, and he had realized that Maoist economic policy was perhaps not very conducive to development. But he also realized the political constraints he faced. He couldn't reform the country, the entire country, because he would have faced deep opposition from entrenched interests. So what did he do? He said, okay, we're going to try to run experiments in these 4 different places. One of them was Shenzhen. Shenzhen is probably the most successful example of urbanization in human history. It went from about 100,000 residents in 1980 to nearly 20 million people living there today, being the hardware capital of the world. And they didn't start by saying, we know exactly what to do. They started with a kind of Deng Xiaoping, a quote, it doesn't matter what kind of cat you have, whether it's white or black, so long as it catches the mouse. And so they were pragmatic. They said, look, let's figure out what works. What you had was an open governing system that pioneered land markets in China, that pioneered labor markets in China, pioneered financial markets in China. It was successful, so in 1984, they declared more regions special economic zones, 1988, additional regions. And the economic growth of China was largely the result of urbanization combined with special economic zones. We also see this replication process happening in financial centers, right? The Dubai International Financial Center was started about 20 years ago, and it's been now replicated in Qatar, in Abu Dhabi, in Afghanistan, in Kazakhstan. And so, it's possible to think about how these institutional reforms can be seated in one place, can be successful, and can replicate throughout the region or hopefully throughout the world to create the conditions for sustainable economic growth. So I want to say welcome. What we're here to do, we want you to meet people, be open, share ideas, make friends, find collaborators, learn, and help build the better cities of tomorrow. Our metrics for success are basically whether we get new cities, charter cities started, whether they make material progress, and whether they can help really accelerate the economic development of the city, of the host country, and hopefully of the region. So with that, welcome to the conference, and thank you.